everyone, it's AJ and I've got something for you to do on a Saturday. Have you ever gone to your fruit bowl and found bananas like these and think, ew, gross, I'm going to throw these out? No, don't do that. Because you know how I feel about waste. We don't want to waste anything, right? And just to dispel, if you think it's an old wives' tale, it's not. These do make the best banana bread, and why? Because as bananas age, they undergo a chemical change and actually become sweeter, and as they decay, if you will, they also lose their composure and start to get mushy, which not only makes your banana bread sweeter, but it makes it moister because it's starting to become liquid. And even if you don't have time as they're rotting, you can always take them and put them in the freezer. Some say that you can just put them in the freezer as is and peel them later, which I've done and works out okay. You can also peel them and then stash them in the freezer. All you have to do is thaw them when you're ready to make banana bread. Or in this case, today we're going to make some banana muffins, and I'm going to tell you why. I kind of like the muffins a little better than I like the banana bread. So we're going to make some banana bread today. So, hey, let's get started. Go grab your bananas. I'll wait. Banana bread is one of those recipes that can be kind of tricky to some people, and understandably so. Banana bread is one of those very science-y kind of things. Ooh, I know. Hey, want to do a good science experiment? Get your kids in the kitchen and whip up a batch of banana bread. We already talked about how the banana decomposes and the sugar becomes more condensed. The solid becomes a liquid. Oh my gosh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about sugars for a minute. I know lots of recipes call for both brown and white sugar. Did you ever think it was a matter of just flavor? If you did, flavor is secondary. It's actually science behind it. Who knew, right? Do you know why that you oftentimes are called for both brown and white sugar? Well, you're about to get your science word for the day, hygroscopic. And brown sugar has more liquid to it, or molasses is added to it. And that's also the difference between brown sugar that is dark and brown sugar that is light, is the amount of molasses that's added to it. And why is this all important? Because, and this is another reason, here's some more science behind your baking, okay, is that how these sugars, the brown and the white, react when they're mixed with liquid. So the next time you read a recipe that says mix your dry ingredients here and your liquid ingredients here and then combine them, it's because the rate that the liquid and the dry ingredients combined can definitely affect the outcome of your bread. Did you know that? Affect the outcome of your cookies as well. So now you have a little science behind it. The same as when you make bread in a bread maker. If you've ever read the instructions where they tell you to put the sugar and the liquid on the bottom and the yeast very last, it's because the quicker those things interact, the difference it's going to make in your bread. You'll end up with a stickier, messier dough. So, same kind of theory behind it. When they call for both a mix of brown and white sugar, it could definitely affect the outcome of your recipe as far as whether if you're making a cookie or a bread, whether it falls flat or overproofs and is too puffy and fluffy. You want just the right mix of density. So that's why we are using both brown sugar and white sugar today. Just another fun fact in your everyday life here at the Kingsville Public Library, and something to do on a Saturday. Who knew you'd be doing science on a Saturday, right? So anyway, we are going to take our well-aged bananas that are, taking on a scientific metamorphosis, if you will. We're going to mash them up into a bowl. We're going to keep our wet ingredients in one spot and our dry ingredients in another. We're going to mix them all together and whip up some fabulous banana bread. But I'm going to give you a couple more tips before we get too far into it. One of the tips or tricks for producing a tasty treat from your kitchen is when you're using nuts to pre-toast them either on the stovetop or in the oven. That'll bring out the flavor of the nut, and in the case of walnuts, oftentimes remove some of that bitterness that comes from a raw nut. So in this case, we're going to toast our walnuts in the oven. I'm going to toss them in some oil, put them on a baking sheet for about 7 minutes, move them around a little bit in that oil, and then they'll be ready to go in our banana bread, and we won't have to worry about any bitter taste that might be in the walnut. So remember, anytime you're using pecans or walnuts or almonds, give them a toast either on the stovetop or in the oven before you put them in your recipe. It'll make it extra delicious. Once our bananas are mashed, we can go ahead and start adding our liquid ingredients. So we're going to add our melted butter. And don't worry, the recipe will be in the comment section below. We're going to add our eggs. And I actually have used some egg substitute today, just because I had a carton in there that's close to the expiration date. And again, with banana bread, when you have so much kind of going into this, if you can substitute a little, that's good. So we're going to just kind of mix the butter and the bananas around and the eggs. And I'm going to add a little bit of the vanilla. And if you've never watched one of my videos before, you know I'm a big proponent of homemade vanilla. It will make all the difference in the world in your recipes. You can really taste the difference. It's absolutely fabulous. Vanilla beans are kind of hard to find right now, and I don't know if it's got something to do with all the, you know, craziness going on or what's happening, but I used to be able to find them quite frequently at Better in Bulk. They have not been able to carry them because they're so expensive. I have not been to the West Side Market in a while. That's oftentimes where I'll pick them up. They do last fairly long. I mean, yeah, I've had these for a while, but eventually, you know, it's just going to kind of lose its punch. But if you can get a hold of some vanilla beans, you just put a little slit inside, throw them in a bottle of middle shelf vodka, and oh my goodness, makes all the difference in the world. So once you have your egg and butter and banana mixed together, we're going to put those sugars in just a minute. I'm going to put my dry ingredients in over here, which is my flour, my baking soda, my salt, and some cinnamon. Remember, there is a difference between your baking powder and your baking soda, and it is what determines, again, the chemical reaction. Anytime we bake, baking is really a science. It's about how one chemical reaction plays into another. And definitely in this case, with like the brown sugar and the baking soda working together, that bicarbonate mixing with that glucose, you get a nice carbon dioxide, which just kind of gives you lift in your fluff. So we're mixing our dry ingredients together, and you know, an easy way to mix your dry ingredients is just to take a whisk and kind of just move it around in there where it's all dry. Just let that sit a minute, and then I'm going to mix my sugar into my egg and butter and banana mixture, and then I'm going to add my dry ingredients, and I'm going to add it and mix it just until it's combined. And you don't want to over mix it. That's one of the important things about a lot of bread recipes or different recipes that have flour in them, because as you mix it and as the liquid and the sugars begin to embrace that chemical reaction, they release the gluten, and that's what makes it chewy. And so if you over mix a batter that has flour and sugar in it, you tend to release too much of that glucose, and then you get a really chewy, tough, not soft and wonderful mix. So that's important. And remember, the other thing we talked about with that wet and dry ingredients is that when we put this all together, the sugar and the flour are almost going to be in kind of a competition to absorb that liquid. So it's very important when they say, you know, to hold off on combining the dry ingredient, you know, put the dry ingredients over here and over there, because that extra time is going to make a difference. One of the other things we're going to do is I'm going to add some chocolate chunks into my muffins. You can add chocolate chips, there's all kinds of things. We're also going to add some nuts into it. But if you've ever added stuff into cupcakes or muffins or even a cake, and it tends to sink to the bottom, it tends to be because of the difference in textures sometimes. So it helps when you do an add-in to add a little bit of flour. So in this case, I've just taken like about a half a teaspoon of flour, and I've coated my chocolate chips in that. I just put them in a Ziploc bag, kind of like I did with the nuts. I'm just going to coat that so that when I go to stir these in, when I scoop them out, they will not stick at the bottom of my batter. So I'm going to put those in, and then I'm going to put my flour in. Just going to stir this until it's combined. Now, the reason that I have not added my nuts at this time is because I'm going to make muffins, and I want to have kind of a little bit of texture to it. So I'm actually going to take my chopped walnuts, and once my batter is in the pan, in the muffin cup, I'm actually going to sprinkle the nuts over top of that. And that way it almost will form kind of a crust. You'll have that kind of nutty crunchiness on top. It'll be kind of a little bit yummy. It won't be a significant crust, but it'll just be kind of an extra little texture at the top, and it'll look kind of pretty too. So again, I'm just going to stir this until it looks, well mixed, but not over mix it. And then we are going to fill our baking cups. We'll sprinkle those nuts right on top. And then when we go to bake it, this is the other key point, and this is why, one of the two reasons that I prefer the muffins over the bread, is that with banana bread, the key to it, outside of over mixing and making sure that you mix your ingredients properly, is not to over bake it. And the big challenge with that is making sure that you bake it thoroughly without over baking it. So you want to watch it very closely. And it is much easier to bake the muffins more thoroughly, to me anyway. It is easier to bake the muffins more thoroughly without drying them out than it is the bread. I have a really hard time a lot of times with the bread getting dried out or not as moist on the ends as it is in the middle. I think the muffins are easier to kind of achieve that overall consistency of being not too dry but yet being thoroughly cooked. And the other reason is because if I have muffins, then they're easy to share, and I can send those out in a variety of different places, and everybody can get some, and I'm not stuck with a whole loaf in the house, because if there's a whole loaf in the house, I'm going to eat the whole loaf. We're just going to devour it. Whereas if I package them up and hand them out to a few different folks, then we've got a couple muffins, we've enjoyed them, and then they're gone. So I've mixed this again. I don't want to over mix this. I'm going to put it in my muffin pans. I'm going to sprinkle that the walnuts on top, and then they'll be ready to go in the oven. We're ready to start filling our muffin cups. And if you want a nice little trick to figure out how to fill your muffin cups, is to, depending on, it doesn't matter what size you have, take a measuring cup, whether you're using the oversized muffins or if you're using the mini ones. You can even take a spoon and set your measuring cup down into one of the pan cavities and see which measuring cup fits. Then you just use that cup and go accordingly, either by dividing it. So if you have one of the bigger pans that'll hold a whole 1 cup, then you know half full is a half cup. Or you simply, in my case, these muffin pans are a 1/3 cup, so I know that by filling this half full, that I will get the exact amount in there. I also like to grease my measuring cup. It helps the batter to come out a little bit easier. Just spray it with some cooking spray, and then the batter just kind of fills up in there. And then the other thing you're going to want to remember to do with all kinds of whether it's cake mixes or muffin mixes, letting your batter rest once it gets into its baking pan, allowing it to kind of settle and acclimate before you put it into the oven really helps it to kind of get that extra lift and rise that it needs. So I'm going to finish filling these up, and then I will sprinkle them with some nuts, and we'll be ready to put them in the oven. So now I'm just going to take my walnuts that I toasted, and I'm just going to sprinkle those right on top of my batter. And I did under toast these just a little bit because they are going to sit on top and get a little more toasty. And I'm going to do one more thing after this. I am going to actually sprinkle this with just a tad bit of cinnamon sugar on top. Again, these nuts will kind of soak into the batter a little bit, but those that don't, that little extra sugar and cinnamon that I put on top will help them from over browning. And it'll also give them an extra little sweetness and tasty flavor. So I have put the nuts on top. I'm going to grab my little cinnamon shaker and just sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon sugar over top, and these will be ready to pop in the oven. So this is my little shaker of cinnamon sugar. Keep it handy in the kitchen just because it's good to sprinkle on a lot of different things. It's good for some cinnamon toast in the morning or your bagel. I've been known to toss a little extra dash on my custard pies. So I'm just going to sprinkle this right again over top of my chopped and roasted walnuts before my muffins go into the oven. Just for that extra little, I didn't have an idea, somebody's texting me. And then they'll be ready to go. And when we pop these in the oven, remember we just want to keep a really close eye on them. Probably about 2 minutes before they're done, we're going to want to have that toothpick handy and just be kind of looking and checking them, because as soon as that toothpick comes out clean, we want to pull those out of the oven so that we don't overbake them. If you overbake them, they're not going to be moist. They'll probably still be good, but not as good as they could be. So our muffins are out of the oven. I've allowed to let them cool for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take them out of the pan and let them cool a little more. But as you can see, I'm not sure that you can see. Let me come around there so that you can see. So as you can see, our walnuts got a little more toasty, but not too toasty. And when we go ahead and pull our muffin paper back, that's always a good sign when the paper doesn't stick. And oh, I wish you could smell them. They smell so delicious. And we have a nice cooked inside, but yet still moist and hopefully delicious. Yep, definitely delicious. Thanks for welcoming the Kingsville Public Library into your home today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and share so that your friends can become our friends, because we always need more friends, right? And if you tried this recipe, let me know how it turned out. I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, stay safe and stay well. I will see you real soon.